Welcome to this explainer. Right off the bat, we're diving into a theoretical framework from our source materials that is, well, it's so massive and honestly so deeply unsettling that it completely rewrites human history. We're looking at unclassified data pointing to a dark, cosmic horror reality called the Gnostic War. The basic idea here is that humanity is trapped in a flawed simulation managed by entities called archons, and to really understand this invisible prison, we literally just have to look up, right at the most familiar object in our night sky.
Now, the academic establishment, the textbooks we all read, insist the moon is just a natural satellite, right? Just a dead rock formed billions of years ago from some random planetary collision. But the data we're analyzing today presents a chilling counterclaim. What if the moon isn't a natural gravitationally captured rock at all? The theory suggests it's actually a hollow, heavily armored, artificial surveillance satellite. I mean, think about it. It is positioned at the exact mathematical distance to perfectly eclipse the sun, and it's tidally locked so we never ever see its dark side. Kinda makes you wonder, doesn't it?
And I want to be super clear here. We are simply analyzing the data presented in these sources. But what makes this absolutely terrifying is who is actually saying it. This isn't just some late-night internet speculation. Dr. Gordon MacDonald, a highly respected senior NASA scientist, is actually on the record suggesting the moon's internal structure is fundamentally hollow. Back in 1970, even scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences published a paper asking if the moon was the creation of an alien intelligence. So, where is all this coming from?
Well, to unravel this cosmic mystery, we don't need to look at ancient myths or anything like that. We just need to audit some dry, unclassified scientific data from the Apollo space program. Because during these missions, NASA essentially accidentally leaked the physical proof of the moon's artificiality. They exposed a truth that, quite frankly, they were entirely unprepared for. Let's look at the timeline of how NASA actually gathered this telemetry. On November 20th, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew intentionally jettisoned their lunar module ascent stage, and they crashed it directly into the lunar surface. The whole goal here was to test their newly installed passive seismic experiment network. And then, a few months later in April 1970, they did it again, this time with Apollo 13's massive S4IB third stage, executing another intentional kinetic impact.
So, what happened next? The anomaly that followed is just staggering. The Apollo 12 impact hit with the kinetic energy of roughly 1,000 pounds of TNT. NASA seismologists, led by Dr. Maurice Ewing, fully expected to hear a short, dull thud. Instead, the seismic equipment recorded the moon ringing like a bell. And it didn't just ring for a minute or two, it rang for an impossible 55 minutes. And it gets crazier. When the much heavier Apollo 13 stage hit, that reverberation lasted for over 3 hours, and the signal traveled to a depth of 25 miles.
And that acoustic physics right there, that math, is what the source material points to as the terrifying proof of an engineered machine. The sources highlight a really simple truth. For a celestial body to ring like a bell for that long, that is a kinetic impossibility for a solid rock.
Think about it like this. If you take a solid magma-cored planet like Earth and you strike it with a seismic shock wave, those vibrations are almost instantly absorbed. They're dampened by that dense liquid core. It's just a dead thud. But on the moon, that acoustic energy didn't absorb at all. It just bounced endlessly. And the only way waves reverberate for hours is if they are bouncing around the interior of a hollow, metallic hull. It's like hitting a giant gong in space.
To put that into perspective, in geophysics, wave dampening is measured by something called a Q factor. For Earth, that number is around 100. The moon's Q factor? It's over 3,000. Mathematically, that proves it lacks a dense, homogeneous core. On top of that, a perfectly solid sphere has a moment of inertia of exactly 0.40. The moon sits lower, at 0.3929. In physics, that lower number actually means the moon is hollow, with massive, localized internal structures pulling at the center of mass.
Now you might be wondering, if it's hollow, how on Earth does it survive billions of years of asteroid impacts? Well, the dossier points to Mascons. These are hyperdense mass concentrations buried right beneath the lunar seas, which NASA actually discovered back in 1968. Fast forward to 1994, and deep spectrum analysis by the Department of Defense Clementine satellite revealed unnatural concentrations of ilmenite, zirconium, and yttrium in these exact areas. These aren't just everyday rocks. These are highly engineered refractory metals that have an extreme resistance to heat and kinetic impact. The terrifying implication here is that the lunar crust is literally an engineered armor plating protecting a hollow superstructure underneath.
So, if the moon is indeed a hollow, titanium-reinforced sphere like these documents suggest, what is its actual function? Well, the framework posits that the moon operates as the primary command and control center for the Arconic network. It's not just a passive observation post. It's a massive orbital broadcast tower projecting a continuous, invisible signal right down onto the human race.
Before we reveal what that signal does, we have to look at our own biology. Earth has a natural heartbeat, known as the Schumann resonance. Basically, global lightning strikes cause our atmosphere to ring at a very stable frequency of 7.83 Hz. The documents show that our brains and our hearts actually evolved to synchronize with this exact signal. It's the natural carrier wave that keeps human consciousness calm, coherent, and intuitive.
But the source documents describe an existential threat that is engineered to sever that exact connection. The moon allegedly projects a localized suppressor field known as the veil right over our planet. Think of it as a massive electromagnetic dampener. It's specifically designed to cut you off from the Earth's natural, life-sustaining frequency.
Let's break down exactly how this works, step by step, because this really explains the mechanics of this invisible frequency war. First, the lunar tower bathes the planet in extremely low-frequency or ELF waves. These waves actively overwrite the Earth's natural 7.83 Hz resonance. By overriding this signal, your natural brainwaves are forced out of that coherent state and suppressed into a baseline frequency of anxiety and survival. Then the archons parasitically feed on this dense emotional energy. They harvest the bioelectric emissions of fear and despair, something they call louche. So in this framework, the moon is actively enforcing a psychological prison reality.
It is an absolutely staggering framework to try and process, isn't it? A reality where gravity, acoustics, and the very moon in the sky are engineered tools of control. We've looked at the physics, the structural anomalies, and the mechanics of this invisible frequency war. So I leave you with this. The next time you look up at the night sky and see that perfectly positioned silver disk, you really have to ask yourself, what are you actually looking at?